Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of CloudBites Conversations, where we have Alba Rivas joining us today. Alba is a principal developer advocate at Salesforce. She's been an MVP. She's worked for a couple of big ISVs in the ecosystem. She's run community groups. She's been on stages at Dreamforce. And so I'm super excited to have Alba here today to chat to her and learn some of the stuff that she's learned and share her story with us. So welcome, Alba.
And thank you, Paul. And hello, everyone. How are you today? I'm so excited to be here having a conversation with Paul, who I know for a long time, actually, from my first steps in the Salesforce community, thanks to Carolina, probably. Uh,
Yes.
Carolina, who was also a Salesforce MVP, and so Paul is a person with I have had like very interesting conversations about development, about the Salesforce ecosystem, about careers in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I'm sure that some of those ideas that we have discussed before are going to come up today, and I'm really looking forward to know what you want to ask me today.
No, I'm really pleased to have you here and just having this chat with you. So I think this is the reason I started this podcast was to get interesting stories from people that are in the ecosystem that have not just taken kind of the direct route or not just not just kind of done a computer science degree and then immediately done Salesforce because Trailhead was there. That wasn't a thing back when a lot of us first started, and just have interesting stories. So I'm really pleased to have you here today. And can you start off? As you say, we have known each other for a long time, which I should probably apologize for in public. And Carolina really needs to apologize to you probably then for introducing us. It's her fault. So I know obviously how you got started in Salesforce, but why don't you give us a bit of background on your career? Because as I mentioned, you're not someone that just came straight into Salesforce. You did cool things beforehand, which make me wonder why you did Salesforce. So you were like a researcher and did graphic design and things like that. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So I have a technical background. I studied telecommunications engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And something fun is that when I was studying at the university, I didn't like programming at all. And I remember myself saying, I'm not going to be a programmer. This is not for me. Uh, Years later, I realized that the problem is that the university was not teaching programming to me in a great way because
Mm-hmm.
my exams were handwritten exams in which I had to write with a paper, like a Java class. So
You had to write. So I didn't do any programming at university. So you actually had to write code with a pen and a paper.
yes, exactly.
Wow.
So that's probably the reason I didn't like programming at university. But then it's like highly probable when you go out from university that you need to do some programming. It doesn't matter the branch that you pick, right? Because, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, in telecommunications engineering, we had networks, we had like satellites, we had like semiconductors, things like that, and in all of them, you need to program with different
Mm-hmm.
languages, different programs, different platforms, but you have to do it in some way, right? So because the what I studied was like so wide, I had like
Mm-hmm.
many options to choose from. And at the beginning, I tried many different things. As you mentioned, I started to work on 5G networks when
Ooh.
LTE was not a thing. I was researching for that at the university. But then I realized that the university world was kind of political, at least
Okay.
in Spain it was. I saw that in the university, like you you need to have like a lot of influence to be able
Mm.
to progress and thrive in your career. And I decided to change. So then um, uh, the first job I did was a job in a technical team of an animation films company. And this was just an opportunity. So I
Yeah.
was on a platform in which students are looking for jobs and companies send offers to you. And
Yeah.
this company, the animation films company, sent a job offer to me. The job offer was becoming a member of the technical team that built the tools for animators.
Okay.
And it was I was going to learn Python, and
Okay.
they also were paying for me a master thesis on it was like innovation management, like I plus D plus I management. So I thought
Yeah.
it was a great opportunity to like change, try
Yeah.
something else, and also learn something else, because they were like offering this master thesis for me. So I spent, I think, 3 or 4 years in that company, and it was a really great start in the private enterprise
hmm
world, because it was like a very fun company, company
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes animation movies. It
Yeah,
was
I was
amazing.
saying, why did you decide to go into like enterprise sales software? Like you could have just. I mean,
Yeah.
my vision is that you were working at Pixar. Now it may not be that, but like I've just got this vision of you being like, okay, I need to test this. Let's make a movie as part of my testing. Is that not how it worked? Or-
Yeah, the story is a bit sad. So the
Yeah.
company had to close
Oh.
because they ran out of money, they ran out of sponsors, and they were able to finish the movie that we were doing. I don't know if you know, but to make an animation movie, you need like 4 years, 6 years, something like that,
Oh,
uh,
really? Wow.
with around 100 people working on the film. So it's crazy the amount of people that are needed to produce a film like that, right? So it was more or less the time that I spent at the company, and they
Yeah.
ended up like publishing the film, and they earned some money in the first months that the film was published, but then they went to bankrupt, and they
Mm.
had to fire everyone.
Wow.
So when I was fired, I was offered another position in a company that did some apps, mobile apps with Android.
Okay.
But in that company, I was not super happy.
hmm
And then I was offered another position through LinkedIn. So it was really again like an opportunity that came by surprise.
hmm
It was not something that I was actively looking for, and I
Yeah.
think that that must be the case for many Salesforce developers, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. So we'll to bury the lead a little bit. Like Alba and I both worked at different times for Financial Force, and like I stumbled into Financial Force because I was doing .NET development and wasn't too happy where I was. The MD at the company I was developing .NET stuff for said to me, "There's no point me giving you a pension because you're not going to be here in 6 months. We're too small, and you don't, and like you just want to do bigger things." And I was like, "Well, that's an interesting motivational talk." So I left. But yeah, no, loads of people fall into it. Before we move on though, so what's the name of the film? Because I
The
mean,
name
obviously,
is Justin and the Knights of Valor.
Justin and the Knights of Valor. Okay, we're gonna have to find that one. Like, what is it in Spanish or English? I
It's
should
no,
Spanish.
it's
I should.
in English. It's in
Oh,
English.
well, yeah.
You can find me in the titles at the end. You can find
There
me.
you go. See, that's what I'm looking for. Is like little snippets where Alba's. Yeah, are you on IMDb then as well?
Yes, I am in
Oh,
IMDb. You can
that's so
find me
cool.
there as well.
So I think is it you and Francis? You know Francis Pinder.
Yes, I know him.
Yeah, he also he was in one. I want to say it was Harry Potter or something. He was in something. Like, yeah, I mean, let's be clear for those who France. And sorry, Francis, if you're listening to this, he was not a lead character. He was not stood at the front. I'm sure it's Harry Potter. But yeah, Francis. So there we go. There's now two Salesforce, sort of former MVPs that are on IMDb. I need to up my game. I'm nowhere near like that level. That's cool. Okay, so Justin and the Knights of Valor. So everyone can go away and find that now and sort of see what that's. I mean, that's cool though. Like working on something like that. So yeah. So okay. So you were doing that. So you've done a bit of Python, done a bit of Java on Android. That would have been trying to work out timelines. That was before like React Native and things as well. So it would have been like I remember programming mobile apps back then, and it was very much like you needed two different programming languages, two different applications, unless you wanted to write something in C to live in the middle, and no one really wants to write
Yeah,
too
I
much
was
C.
definitely like a much more backend developer,
Mm-hmm.
and I used JavaScript and jQuery for some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like old JavaScript, like old syntax JavaScript. Then when Lightning Web Components arrived, I had to like, learn everything from scratch
Oh
because
yeah.
things have changed like that much from 2010 to 2019, which is when LWC came out.
I've got this theory about JavaScript, right? That so I'm like you. I was far more a back end person prior, really, to kind of even when like we were at, I mean, and so, yeah, a little bit of under the hood stuff here for fun, but like you and I both worked at Financial Force. There wasn't a lot of front end development there. There was some Visual Force pages, but it wasn't really too much kind of rich interactive user interfaces. Um, and when I did mobile, most of my mobile work was in Objective C on iOS, and iOS was really good for like you drop a button in place, da-da, and there was a lot of kind of like drag and drop stuff. Um, I learned JavaScript many years back when it was really just kind of for doing like showing an alert pop up or like adding two numbers on a page and things like that. I wonder if JavaScript's popularity for doing that helped or hindered it as a programming language. Because you're right, like there was a huge, like I don't know how you felt, but when I came back to JavaScript, sort of probably similar-ish time, late 20 teens, and I started doing some stuff with React and React Native when I was at a former company, and like really had to relearn that. Oh, this is a proper programming language. There are like, you know, prototypical inheritance things and all sorts of stuff, and closures and all that stuff. And I do
Yeah,
wonder whether JavaScript would have been in a. And I know it's the most dominant language in the world, so I'm asking if it could have been in the better place than the number one spot, but whether it would have been in a better state had it not had that. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah. So I think that the fact that JavaScript is so spread is because it's used for the web, because it's free, because everyone can use it, and because yes, browsers adopt it like
Yeah.
from minute one, right? Um, when I had to relearn JavaScript, it was like a new language for me. It was a different thing,
Mm.
and something that happened to me, and that I'm sure that happened to many people, is that some of the concepts didn't like stick in my mind after having played with it, with those concepts like quite a lot in real
Mm.
implementations, in real use cases, and and even some of these concepts are, so every day that I use JavaScript, I understand new things. I
Mm.
understand. I maybe um, I maybe write something that I have written many times in the past, but I really start understanding it at that point, like many months later,
Yeah.
because it's like really complex, right? It has like so many layers of abstraction. For instance, asynchronous. I
Mm.
remember how I used to do asynchronous in 2014.
The little
Then when I
triangle of
yeah, and when I had to relearn JavaScript, then there was this thing of promises and async await. And then there was a moment in which I thought, okay, I understand promises, but I really didn't. And then after some time playing with it, I really understood it, and
yeah,
uh, I really like grasped the what's behind the scenes, what's working behind the scenes, right?
yeah,
And I think that many many developers who have learned on their own, not because they wanted to uh, they were working for a company, or they wanted to work
Mm.
for a company just because they were like doing web pages in their own and so on. They started with JavaScript. Like it's like the most direct way to build something that is visual, that is like easy
Yeah,
to test and to use in, and that's probably one of the reasons, I would say.
yeah, no, it definitely helps. That it's such a ubiquitous, and like anyone can run it in a browser. The one thing you definitely have on your computer is a browser and a text editor. Like it's dead easy to get going with it, to do, to make a little alert pop up, or have you enter your name and then it display your name on the screen. All sorts of clever things. No, yeah, completely agree. The learning thing you've just said there about relearning JavaScript. Yeah, I every time I sit down now to write, because I think there's two types of JavaScript. I think there's what I need for Lightning Web Components, which is, it's always going to be a subset of it, because with Lightning Web Components, 9 times out of 10, I'm changing the display of something on the screen to look a bit easier. Or I'm capturing some data. It's quite simple stuff. I think that other JavaScript I've written for like sort of some websites and web apps I've got hosted somewhere, every time I look at them, I'm like, okay, I think I know what this is. I need to go away and kind of spend a bit of time. I'm going to break it first before I fix it. I still don't understand closures. Closures are one of those things that every time I read about them, I'm like, oh, and then I look at the
Yeah.
next example on the page, I'm like, oh. But I think that's a really interesting point, though, for people that are listening along who aren't necessarily, well, either if you're a junior developer, or if you're just starting out developing, or even if you're sort of excuse me, anyone in the ecosystem who's learning, is that there's no expectation and nobody gets it first time. Truly understanding something takes a long time to do, and I
Yeah.
think that it's one of the things that I think is often forgotten about by people is that process. Is that there's the ability to read some code and understand what it's doing. Then there's the ability to write some code and know what it's doing. And then there's the ability to sit down and write good code that does what you want in the most efficient way. And that third step, it's always an ongoing process. And so I think, it's a really interesting point you raised there, and really good to be so open about how just hard it is sometimes to come back to something, and like even as an experienced developer to relearn something.
Yeah, I will give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was working on a Lightning Web Component,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to refresh. Let me see if I remember. So I wanted to refresh by listening to a platform event that was being fired in the backend
Mm-hmm.
with the EMP, uh, Lightning EMP component, EMP connector. I don't remember the name, but the
Yeah.
subscriber to the PubSub API. So I didn't get it to work, and I I asked for help to one of the software engineers for Lightning Web Components, with Pierre-Marie Dartus, who is French. I don't know if you know him, but he's
I don't know.
like an amazing developer and always helps me a lot. So I spent half an hour with Pierre-Marie, both of us taking a look at the components, saying, it's not possible. How this is not working? How is this possible? Debugging and so on. And finally, the problem was that this
Yeah.
have the correct value because I was not passing an arrow function to one of the parameters of the function that I was trying to use. And we are both experienced developers, but we spent half an hour together
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to debug that dumb component that didn't work. So, yeah, it's complex.
This in JavaScript. I'm just in the background. There's a joke. What is it? Uh, I'm sure there's a joke somewhere that's like, I'd be in JavaScript. I'd be so over this if I knew what this was. It's it's like it's it's just such a crazy, crazy thing in JavaScript. Like just how mad something like that is. But as you say, like you can spend hours on it as a seasoned developer, going in and being like, why isn't this work? The number of times that, and we'll talk a little bit about AI later, but so I use Copilot in my VS Code, and it's a fantastic tool. It works really well and it helps me. But the number of times I get lazy and like it puts something in and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's fine. And then like I read through it, it's like, oh no, I've changed the name slightly, or the number of bugs I have, or sort of reasons my code won't compile, where I've just typed something wrong, or I've changed the name to make it simpler and not changed it everywhere. Like there's so many things that as a developer you can just switch off and not do. It's it's dead easy. But yeah, it's a for anyone out there who thinks that they're not getting there, don't worry. Like even if I've written 2 books on Apex programming, and I spent the other day figuring out that I had an error because I had not actually said I didn't call insert. I didn't call insert on something, and I was wondering why my record wasn't being created. Like, just it happens. So you were doing. So you tried research, you were working in the graphic design place, and then you moved into Salesforce, moved into Financial Force then, yep, which is the job through LinkedIn. And that was your first kind of exposure to Salesforce.
Yeah, something fun about that is I mentioned that I moved to that company because I was not happy in my previous company, not because I really wanted to get into the Salesforce ecosystem. And when the manager of that office explained to me what Salesforce was, I said, like internally, I thought internally, like, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity because it seems like a good company.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like Salesforce. I'm not going to like it. So
No.
I'm going to spend here some months. And meanwhile, I have time to look for a different job while I'm like in a better company because I wasn't like happy in my previous company. And I took the job thinking that I was going to quit like a few months later. But then I started to work with Salesforce, and I think it was like a combination of factors uh, that helped me to stay in technology. So, first of all, of course, I loved the technology. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm with Salesforce today. I'm a person who doesn't like configuring networks, changing IPs, managing infrastructure, managing databases. Okay, that's something that I didn't like
Yeah,
at all. And in Salesforce, I didn't have to worry about anything of that because I could just like program my Apex code and some of my Visual Force pages, and that was it. Okay. But on the other hand, or additionally, there were other factors because that company, and you can probably agree with me on this, had a really good training program for starters. I spent like the first 3 months learning, and many people gave talks to me, and they gave me like a lot of materials. And there was like a really coaching act from the company towards me that helped me get up to speed really quickly and really learn about the technology very fast. And also, I was surrounded of very smart people and very
mm,
kind people
yeah,
because all the developers in my team were always happy to help me to respond my questions. We did code reviews. Code reviews is such an amazing tool to learn because I learned a lot from my masters that time, which
mm-hmm.
were the technical leads and all the experienced developers in my team. And that was also like an important factor of why I decided to stay with the technology because I had the tools that I needed to get my job done and to thrive,
Yeah.
right?
No, it makes sense. It's interesting because um, for timelines for people. So for anyone watching on the video, they'll not believe this, but I'm older than Alba. I know, you, I know that I look 21, but obviously I'm slightly older than that. And Alba's only just over 23. But so when I joined Financial Force and was at Financial Force, I think 2 or so years before you, because you were 20.
I joined, I believe, in 2014.
Okay, yeah, so at least 3, if not 4 years. I'm going to have to check my own LinkedIn now to find out when I worked there. But yeah, um, So I think I was there 2010. So yeah, so 4 years. So I'd left. So Alba and I never worked together there. And it's interesting you say about like the coaching aspects and things like that, because when I joined, so I was I was employee number one
Oh,
technically, because so before I joined, for those who, not to get into the deep history of Financial Force, or Satinia as it's now known, but they were spun off from a company called, so there was a product called Coda that became Coda to Go, which is why if you look at Financial Force's namespace, it's C2G. And so they kind of taken all these people over, which was a bunch of team in the Harrogate office in the UK, and then some of the Spanish team from Unit 4 in Granada. And so I was the first person that was ever interviewed and hired as it being Financial Force and not under Coda to Go. So I had Jeremy Roche interview me, who was the CEO at the time. So Jeremy and Andy Fawcett were my interviewers. And yeah, I remember joining the company, and similar to you, I found Salesforce was really exciting. Having done .NET and Rails and a bunch of other things, I loved the fact that I didn't have to mess around with databases and deploy that. It was just painful. I loved not having to build user authentication, which I know is such a stupid thing to say, but never having to think like, okay, where am I storing passwords? Like all that stuff's done. It's easy. It just saves hours. I was only there for a year. The reason I left was because a lot of that stuff you're saying about having the support network in place wasn't there when I was there. There was a bit of flux at the time I was there with some changes. So it wasn't the right spot for me, but I definitely kept on with Salesforce, as we know. But I think the Spanish team, though, because a lot of the people that I was working with were still there when you were there, the likes of Carolina, Agostina, Sergio, Jesus, Arcas, Hager, loads of people there were just, they were all really, really lovely, friendly people, as well as a lot of the UK staff, to be clear. But the Spanish team that you'd have been interacting with were always really good and supportive. And so, it definitely makes a difference, I think, when you've got those people around you who you can just sit there and say, I need help. And Agostina and Carolina, I know in particular, you probably worked with, and they were just so good at just being methodical with the task.
Mhm. I also felt that like the company was doing things well, not only in regards to the process of how you create code and how you do quality checks and so on, but also in the way they were doing like they were applying software engineering techniques to the code base so that the code base was scalable and modularized and so on. And this was thanks to the Apex enterprise patterns. And I was lucky because in one of my first coaching sessions at Financial Force was a one-to-one in-person session with Andy Fawcett. And he was the one who first showed me Apex enterprise patterns. So I was very lucky because I was like surrounded of very smart people who were doing things well. And I think that was like really important, but that because that was like so different with the previous companies I had worked for, with the university, and with everything I had done before on top of technology.
No, Andy, Andy, sort of used to sit with me and train me, as did Stephen Wilcock, who's still there, and Tony Scott and Anish and a bunch of others. I'll be honest, I am not a huge fan of the enterprise patterns. I think as I've done more Salesforce, that I see them slowing things down more than they scale things up in some areas. We're not going to deep dive into this technical area. Alba and I are going to meet up at London's Calling in a few weeks, and we can kind of thrash this out then and decide who's the. But I think that they can. I think they definitely have a place. I think there's definitely some good use cases for them. Don't get me wrong. I just think like things like a unit of work. I just found that slowed things down dramatically in areas, and I think it can kind of add things. But equally, though, it was a very good thing to learn, and it was good to see kind of very detailed software engineering patterns put in place. Whether or not you think they're right or wrong is always a matter of opinion on some of these things. But it was good to see kind of the structure and the rigor around developing properly.
Yeah, I think their usage must be justified, and I think that for big companies, big app exchange company, it's always a good fit. But it's also my opinion, and again, we can discuss it at London's
Yeah,
Calling.
yeah.
It's a-
We'll do it. We'll have a few drinks, get violent. No,
yeah.
cool. So yeah, so Financial Force, you were there, and whilst you were at Financial Force, yeah, one of the things I know that they had as well was a really supportive network of people helping to what's the word I'm looking for? Helping to focus on like the broader career aspects as well. So things like how you would get involved in speaking, how you would get involved in blogging, and things like that. And obviously, whilst you were at Financial Force, you became an MVP as well, and got involved with Dreamforce.
Yeah, yeah, that's another factor that made me stay with the technology. That the company also supported me because I knew about the community because of Carolina, because Carolina was already a Salesforce MVP. She was running the Granada developer group, and I started to attend the meetings she was doing. And there was a point that she offered me to co-lead the group. And at the beginning, I say, okay, this is going to be maybe a lot of work. I'm not going to find it that useful. But when I started doing it, like attending the group and later on like running it myself, I realized how helpful it was in many different ways, like for me, for my career, for my personal development, and for anything work wise, right? And thanks to the developer group, I was able to meet a lot of people. I Thanks to Carolina also, I started to write my blog because I was, I'm a very like I'm a person who likes to experiment a lot, and I'm curious. I'm very
Yeah.
curious. So when I'm working with something, I like to take a look at it in depth, see what's behind the scenes, and really play with it as much as I can, so I really understand how it works, right? And I was doing that with all the features I was using in my daily job. And then Carolina told me, "Why don't you create a blog to talk about these things that you are investigating? If you write a blog," she told me, "you're going to learn yourself, because while you are writing the blog, you're going to put your ideas in order, and it's going to be like a good way to summarize everything that you learn and and learn from it, right? It's for you. But also you're going to help others, because people reading your blog, maybe people facing the same problem for days,
Yeah.
weeks, months, and maybe they read your blog and they find a solution and you're helping those people." So I decided to start writing blog. And then she and Agustina also pushed me to give presentations. They told me, "Okay, now you're writing a blog. Why don't you try to give a presentation?" "No, presentations are not for me. I don't have communication skills. I don't, my English is so bad. I'm not going to speak properly in English." Whatever, whatever. It doesn't matter. I finally jumped into the swimming pool, we say in Spanish, and started to like prepare presentation for conferences. And there is where the company really helped me, because when I was selected, for instance, for my first talk at London's Calling, which is, I think, when I met you first time, London's Calling 2015. It was my first
Possibly.
presentation in an international event. The company decided to support me because they knew this was good for my career. They knew this was good for the company because I was going to an event talking about smart things in representation of a company,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they decided to pay for the trip and to support me. And that's one of
Yeah.
the other reasons I was successful.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, yes, it probably was. I'm trying to think back now. I'm really bad at remembering when I first met people. So if that, I mean, we'll go for that date. Yeah, we'll go for London Schooling 2015. Yeah, it's. I think there's a few things you've hit on there that are really kind of key and important. So number one, just for the people at home or driving or wherever who aren't aware of who so Carolina that we keep on referring to is Carolina Ruiz. She is a former Salesforce MVP. She's a technical architect at Maven still. And she's done loads and loads of things. She's spoken at Dreamforce lots of times and lots of different places. And she has the I'm going to say the lucky, wonderful acclaim of having worked with both Alba and me, which is obviously what everyone wants to have on their CV. So that's Carolina. She's an all-round superstar. So you can find her. I think it's Carol en la Nube on Twitter, and she's on LinkedIn and things.
Mm.
But what you were saying about the writing it for yourself, I think, excuse me, really really important because so when I started blogging and doing even now the things that I do when I'm doing these videos or book reviews or anything like that is it's always for me rather than for other people. I'm doing this conversation we're having, bless you, is it will be posted on YouTube and everything else, but I'm doing it because I'm interested in finding out more about what Alba's done and what Alba's learned so I can apply that myself. And I think that there's a lot of people don't realize that one of the things excuse me you can do with blogging is build up or blogging or whatever it might be, bless you again, is build up your own kind of library of stuff. So the reason the reason I started the CloudBites YouTube channel that we're on, the reason that I wrote my Apex books is because I had an incident one day where I was stuck. I had an error, and I couldn't figure out what the error was and why it wasn't working. And so I did what every good developer does, and I put it into Google. And I went onto Stack Exchange, and I found someone with the exact same error, and I was like, "Oh, brilliant!" And I started scrolling down. I was like, because that's the gold mine, isn't it? When you get onto Stack Overflow or the developer forums, and someone's got exactly the same error code, and it says that the question's been answered, you're like, I'm going to get the answer here. And I scrolled down, and there was an answer that answered the question, and it was an accepted, top-rated answer. I'd written it. I was stuck on a problem that I'd written an answer to about like 6 months beforehand, and so you just forget things. Everyone does it. So having that library then just means that even if you just find your own stuff again, you're far less likely to forget it. You got it there to reference, and if you can help someone else, it is all the better. But it really can help you organize your thoughts, and I think that curiosity as well of just understanding that as a sort of a side question. And I'm going to say this, not having read your blog in a while. Did you write your blog in Spanish or in English?
So I think it was mixed. I think I started to write it in Spanish, and then I started to do some articles in English when I became less scared of the English language, and we didn't had ChatGPT or anything to fix our grammar mistakes. But by that time, and if I take a look at one of those initial blogs, I'm going to find a lot of mistakes. But I think it's not that important
No,
because because we're talking about technical things. So the important thing is that the main points are clear, and really our universal language is code. So as long as you're showing code, if maybe you have a small mistake in the sentence that is describing the code, that's fine. It's not that bad. And then I continue like writing in English and improving my English. I still have like a lot of I make a lot of mistakes. I know, I'm conscious of that, but I'm more confident with myself, and that's important because I know many people who are not native English speaker who are scared of public speaking, submitting talks to conferences, and so on, and who are really smart and who have a lot to share.
Mm.
So to those people, if they're watching or listening today, please don't be scared. Give it a try. Give it a try, because English is like a so universal language that many people in like with different accents, with different backgrounds, with different mother tongues
Mm.
speak it,
Yeah,
and it's like perfectly reasonable to make mistakes while we talk, while you talk, and when you even writing. No, with writing you have ChatGPT, but
yeah,
but but it's perfectly reasonable. And what it's really important is the message, is what you share.
yeah. And completely. The reason I asked is I think I was going to ask, and I think you've already answered that. You preemptively answered my question about it helping you be better at English and more confident in communicating. Because put it this way: there's a reason we're doing this conversation in English and not in Spanish. Number one, because my Spanish is, I'm taking lessons, I'm getting a bit better, but it's no es muy bueno at the moment. It's un poco español. Um, but it is a far more generic universal language. It means that English speakers are really lazy about learning languages. Like I've got one day I'd love to do a talk in another language. Like one day I'm going to be good enough at Spanish to do a Dreamolay talk in Spanish, so we're a while off that yet. But the but what I was going to say as well is just around that point you're making there, for anyone that is listening and isn't a native English speaker, or truth be told, is listening and is an English speaker and is learning a language. Um, I um, I remember, so to make another story about Carolina, who we just spoke about. She moved over to Harrogate and lived in the UK for a number of years, and really kind of close friend of mine. And like her, there's no denying that Carolina is Spanish. In the same way that if when we listen to Alba, we know Alba is Spanish. You have a very slight Spanish accent, Alba, and the same way that Carolina has I have a very slight English accent. When I talk Spanish in my lessons, there's no one going there and be like, oh, is he from Granada, or is it Barcelona? No matter how good I get at Spanish, I will always have an English accent on my Spanish. That's the way I'm programmed and will work. I could live in Spain for 20 years and still have an English accent on it.
Totally.
And that's fine. And most people are not, when I'm having a conversation with you or with Carolina or any of our other Spanish friends or French friends that we have, like if we're talking to Fabian or we're talking to Jean-Michel or any of these people, like I'm aware that you're all speaking your second language to accommodate me because I don't speak your language properly. So I'm the rude one, if anything. But B is, what, as you say, it's the message. If I get what you're on about, does it matter whether you've said I had this rather than I have this? No, doesn't matter at all. Like people, if you make something great, if you make a big mistake that's going to put you in a perilous situation, you use a wrong word that's going to be misconstrued, then I'll be nice enough to say, no, Alba, you don't mean to say that, and correct you. But like in general, communication, the message is key. And I think for anyone listening, don't be afraid of that, because people if you're giving a talk outside your mother tongue in particular, or you're writing outside your mother tongue, people are only interested in the message there. And especially at events, people are very supportive. I've never once come out of a talk at any event where I've listened to someone who was speaking English as a second language and thought, well, do you know what? That was a really good talk, but the fact that they had an accent is what upset me about it, and I'm completely going to disregard what they've said. No one does that. People want to learn the content, so don't let that be a barrier. But equally for English speakers out there, don't be lazy and try and learn a little bit of Spanish or French or whatever language you need for whatever phrase. Because we've got conferences everywhere now. We've got Berlin. We've got wasn't there one in was there one in Eastern Europe the other week as well? I saw.
There was a Polish streaming. We
Yeah,
had also we've seen Ohana Now we have Portugal Dreaming, and next week or in 2 weeks,
So,
London's Calling.
so yeah, there's
Uh,
lots of opportunities for non-English, for English speakers to go and learn another language as well to kind of welcome everyone in. So that's so that's so I think that segues nicely on as well. As you became more confident talking, you gave a lot of presentations, and then you had a sort of a 6-month window where you were a trainer, weren't you? And then you moved to Salesforce.
yes, yes. There was a point in which I wanted to do something different. I was hired by a Salesforce training company in Spain,
Mm-hmm.
but which was great. It was a great time. But I only spent there 6 months because a developer advocate position opened
Yep.
in Salesforce, and I said, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. I knew all the team
Yeah.
really because they were going to events. I was going to events, so I knew Peter, my manager who hired me. I knew everyone, and it was like my job. It was my job. That job was for me because the job consisted of doing what I was doing in my free time because
Mm-hmm.
when I was creating blogs and videos and going to conferences, like everything before joining Salesforce, I was preparing it mostly in my own time, except in some cases that even the company gave me time to prepare that. Um, so um, when I saw this opportunity of getting paid for was what I was doing in my free time. I said, okay, this job is for me.
Yeah.
And then when like months after joining Salesforce, people who were at my interview,
Yep.
they told me that the interview like standing out from the other interviews completely because I had been doing that for a long time. So the interview, I
Yeah.
had several interviews, but one of the interviews was giving a presentation about Lightning Web Components. And so it was like easy. It was
Yeah.
the place where I had to be.
That makes sense. No,
And I'm
that's
so happy for that. I'm
yeah.
great.
No, I mean, you are definitely one of the, you know, one of you're a very natural developer advocate. And so, when we say you're a natural developer advocate, can you tell everyone a little bit more about what being a developer advocate or a principal developer advocate as you are now is? What does that entail? What does that mean?
Yeah. So our objective is to enable developers on
Hmm.
certain technologies. That's our main objective. And to do that, normally we create first code, we create sample apps or pieces of code that developers can take a look at and use as examples that
Hmm.
show how to use those technologies. And then once we have the code samples ready, we create content to distribute them and to
Hmm.
market them.
Yeah.
That content can be written content, such as blog post. It can be podcast,
Yep.
same as what we are doing today, and it can also be video. Video has become like more and more important,
Mm.
especially after the pandemic. When I joined, it was not that relevant, but with the pandemic, like video became extremely important, and that's what we are trying to push forward more because video at the end in video you have kind of everything, right? You have
Yeah.
the visuals, you have the audition, and you have also the opportunity to write and type comments and so on. So and we are doing live streams, we are also doing pre-recorded videos, and we are like attending conferences and giving
Mm.
talks at conferences, which is the thing that I enjoy the most, of course, because you have the opportunity to see people face to face. There is where
Yeah.
the real interesting conversations come up, like after
Yeah.
uh, the sessions in those networking events or networking minutes that we spend. But of course, the other things that I do, I really enjoy them.
So I've got an interesting question because I was discussing this with so this to give you for the background for people who may be listening to this a long time in the future, this question comes from two parts. So number one part was I was talking to Christine Marshall on I think the last episode of the podcast, where we were talking about her work at Salesforce Ben, and she creates a lot of content, different types and technical content. And one of the things I was saying about as someone who both creates and consumes content is I find video for programming stuff quite a mixed bag is the word. I have like video courses out there on programming, so I'm well aware that I am kind of going to contradict myself here in the production of this. But I think there is certain times where with programming content you want to just be able to copy and paste, and there's no way of doing that in a video. You know what I mean? Like you have to. I find that can be a bit jarring sometimes in video content, is that there are certain programming topics that I think just work better with a blog or a long form piece. But to kind of build on that, I saw a post from Christian Sander Knapp, who is another MVP on Twitter, and then I posted about it on LinkedIn. And basically, he was asking where all the detailed, deep Salesforce technical content has gone. And it was really interesting. Kind of I posted my thoughts about it. Posted my thoughts about it, and I posted kind of where I think things have gone. And there's this really kind of detailed set of answers on this LinkedIn thread about it. And some of it is people saying that Twitter or X has become more problematic and less is being shared on there. Some people are saying there's more on LinkedIn. And I'm just keen to kind of, I will get to a question, I promise. What I'm keen to ask is, for yourselves and from, I'm not taking this as an official Salesforce position, but from your perspective, Alba, do you think that there is particular content that works better as a deep dive blog, kind of going through explaining it step by step versus a video? Because when you said about that curiosity, one of the things that I've always kind of done, and what I was saying about in this kind of deep technical thing, is that I think that a lot of that comes from that experimentation and curiosity. I mean, a video that says here's how you use this thing out of the box, I think is a good place for video. But I think where you're perhaps doing something that is off the beaten track a bit, I think there is where, for me, a blog and a really detailed kind of explanatory dive through work. So I don't know, what are your thoughts, and how do you decide how best to share different types of content?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I read your blog. I think it is
Okay.
really. I read your blog, and I agree to your observations, and I will come back to that later. So first of all, I so it's demonstrated that different people learn in different ways. So some people learn better like by listening, just by listening. For instance, Christy Fidura, who is my co-track lead for Dreamforce and TDX developer tracks, and we always do a lot of dry runs for sessions, right? She learns by listening. She loves session in which the speaker has great communication skills, and she doesn't need to see visuals. Okay. Some people learn by reading. Some people need visuals, right? For instance, I'm a person who needs visuals. For me, a picture worth 1,000 words. 100%. If I have a test, for instance, history, I remember when I was studying history, if I only had the text and I read the text like 100 times, I wasn't able to memorize it. I had to do my schema, because my mind is like a lot of mathematics, right? And I needed to write a schema and then think about, okay, I need to remember this point and this point and this point, and do something that was more visual, right? So for instance, when I'm doing dry runs, I always try to explain to the people, you need to target all the audiences. So you need to have a good balance of what you are saying, the text that you have in your slides, at least at possible, but at least have some points, some bullets.
Yeah.
And also the visuals, don't have just tests, try to make them nice, because that's going to make like visual people learn more. Okay. So definitely one factor is the type of learning style that each person has. Then I think that, of course, some of the content is more suitable for different formats. That's why, for instance, at Dreamforce, we have breakout sessions, which are
Hmm.
longer sessions in a more quiet place, which are supposed to hold like much more in-depth deep dives.
Yeah.
And we have theaters, which are like more inspirational sessions. They are shorter, they are in a place in which there is some noise, and it doesn't matter, because it's like more important probably like the presence of the person who's there, and they are not getting into too many details that need like that much
Yeah.
concentration,
Yeah.
right? And with content is the same. So if it's like a very complex topic, for sure it needs a blog, it needs a developer guide, it needs
Yeah. Yeah.
documentation that you can take a look at and see all the code examples. And it needs code examples that are well explained through comments or through like uh, the names of
Yeah.
the variables, methods,
Yeah.
etc. Right? And probably short videos are not like a good candidate for that. However, code lives, because they are longer and because you have the opportunity to interact with the speaker,
Hmm.
could fit into that, because you can like type step by step the solution for the problem,
Hmm.
and you can interact with people meanwhile, and if people have questions they can ask you. So it really depends like on the type of content, but people are going to prefer also one format or the other based on their capacity on this or their learning style. And also, and this may be controversial, I think it's something generational. I think it has to do with age. Because
You call me old, Alba.
yeah, because uh, I'm used to books and to reading blogs, and I usually prefer that if I need to look for something, because, well, first of all, books are indexed. So if you want to look for something, it's really easy to go to the page in which that thing is, and you can read like you don't need to read every single word. You can read like faster, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With video, it's kind of different. Well, with pre-recorded videos, you can have the YouTube timestamps, and that
Yeah.
helps. But you have to listen to the whole thing. Some people put them at 2 times speed, so they listen to it faster, right?
Yeah.
But it's a different experience. But young people, the new generations, they have they have been born with video,
Yeah.
and they use Twitch every day. They don't watch TV anymore. They just use Twitch. So for them, it's probably easier to learn through video rather than blogs or reading, because reading also takes an effort, right? It's you
Yeah.
need
No,
to
no,
make.
makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, you're the first person that's come on the podcast and called me old and insulted me. So I'm joking. No, but I do get what you mean. Though. I'm very much when I think about my learning style. I have a pile of books here, and like I'm not going to move the camera because I'll never get it back. But there is literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's 13 Salesforce books unread in a pile there, and I've got another 4 or 5 along the side that I've read, and I'm gonna like do video reviews for. Yeah, I can see all of yours. I'm very much that way. I think it's an interesting observation that on top of the other ones, because I think the hardest thing I find now is and what I think was really good about about sort of X at the time or Twitter at the time was the way it curated the content together, and the network effect of that kind of cross sharing was much better than I think LinkedIn or others do nowadays. So yeah, it is. it is a really interesting thing. Personally, I'm trying to do more content of different types, such as videos and podcasts, and lots and lots of others. But it is, it is an interesting challenge to kind of figure out what works best and do it, as I say, in a way that works for you. One of the things I found in that kind of thread and conversation was a presumption by some people sometimes that it's being the only reason that people create content is because the only reason I'm doing this is because to make money. I make no money from podcasts or YouTube videos. I am not Mr. Beast. I am not that level of kind of monetization. I think I get zero for it. If anything, it is a net cost to have someone edit the videos. But I enjoy doing it, and I'm trying to get the information out there for people in the format that I think works best for them. So yeah, it is an interesting thing. I've also learned from that what you just said there. I didn't realize there was a difference between the theatre area and the kind of rooms in Dreamforce, because having done both, I never really have thought of mine being more one way or another. So that's it. There's a lot of thought that goes into these things I'm not even aware of, eh?
There is, and a lot of preparation.
No, it makes sense. And so, one of the things you mentioned there was Twitch, and I know that you stream with is it Salesforce para Devs, your YouTube channel, which I assume, given the Spanish title, is Spanish language focused. So, how long? Tell us a bit about that. When did you start doing that? How does that work? What's the focus of it?
So I started to stream in Spanish because there is a big need there. So it's true that English is the universal language, and that almost everybody, or there is a big quantity of people who are able to understand English, but there are many people who don't know English yet.
Yeah.
And the Spanish speaking world is a good example of that. There are many countries in which English hasn't had the push that it's having in other countries such as Germany or France. I'm not that sure, but for instance, Switzerland. I was living in Switzerland for a year on an Erasmus, and everyone speaks English there. But in Spanish-speaking countries, that's not the case in most of the countries, right? And many people was writing to me on LinkedIn and saying me, please, can you produce content in Spanish? Because we put the subtitles, but it's not the same, because, you learn much better in your mother tongue language, right? In your mother tongue. And it's low effort for me because it's, again, my mother tongue. And it's just like repeating the content that I do in English, but doing it in Spanish. So I decided to give it a try and start streaming. And I have to say that it's something that I enjoy a lot, but that I have deprioritized a little bit now, because I'm like too busy. I'm super busy at work and also in my personal life, because Paul, I got married 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I had to organize like a lot of things, and I couldn't like spend like my personal time doing all the things that was about, like preparing the wedding and so on. So my plans are to resume streaming, because I know how important it is. I've received millions of messages saying to me like, thank you, we have learned a lot of things to that. There's no content in Spanish, you should keep doing this. And my plans are to continue, but probably when Dreamforce finishes this time, something like that, because I'm currently like, I cannot cope with everything. It's impossible. So yeah, but it's a very nice project. I've been streaming for maybe 3 years or 4, and all the chapters are uploaded to YouTube. So if you are listening to this conversation and you're a Spanish speaker, or Spanish, you can go to YouTube and take a look at all the chapters, because I've been building an app from scratch, showing how to use Apex and Lightning Web Components and APIs and all the different features that you can use in the platform. And it is very complete. It's very
Okay.
complete. I think I don't remember how many chapters I have, but maybe 60 or something like that. I can
Oh
take a
wow,
look.
that's a lot. So Alba, you said you had all of those. So how many episodes have you got up? Then was it
47. I just
47? So, so that's a so each one's what, a couple of hours or an hour long. So
yeah, an hour and a half, something like that.
so
And
basically about a week and a half to 2 weeks worth of just content if you were doing a regular 40-hour work week. So
yes,
lots.
exactly.
Cool. No, you sound good. So and you were saying you enjoy kind of the live streaming. So how talk me through, because it's one of those things that I've always shied away from, and the reason being is that I did a talk at London's Calling one year, um, where I live coded a Heroku server um, and deployed it in front of people. And for me, and I mentioned this on a previous podcast, for me it was the worst presentation I've ever given. I hated it because it's a very hard thing. It was kind of a 20 to 30 minute window. It's a hard thing to code and talk about what you're doing at the same time and not make and like not forget things, not make mistakes. So yeah, so how do you do it? Like do you know exactly what you're going to be writing up front, or do you kind of make it up as you go along a bit? And how do you find works best?
Yeah, so I agree. It's hard. It's really hard. And sometimes, so I'm taking a look at the screen and I have made a mistake and I have written, instead of string, I have written like streak, something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't see it just because I'm talking, I'm
Hmm.
controlling that the streaming software is working well, I'm controlling that the camera doesn't blur or switch off, I'm taking a look at the comments on the chat. So it's multitasking and
Yeah.
it's hard. But on the other hand, I don't think that you need to think about streaming in the same way as a conference talk
Mm.
or a regular talk, because first of all, you cannot like prepare 1 hour or 2 hours of content like
Yeah.
perfectly scripted. You cannot do that. It's like unfeasible, unreasonable. And second, people also learn from your mistakes. So
Mm.
what you are showing in streaming, think about it, is how you work, is a day in your daily job,
Mm.
right? And if you're working, if you're developing without a camera, you spend a lot of time debugging, searching on Google, finding, searching in Stack Exchange, talking to colleagues, right? Asking,
Yeah.
hey, this is not working. Do you have any idea why? Whatever. And showing that is one great value of streams, because like young people or people with not a lot of experience really learn from that,
Yeah.
really learn how to perform your daily job. Being a developer, it's the real experience, no fluff, no decoration. It's just what you do every day. And that has a value as well, because they understand the logic behind, or the steps behind. I have a problem and I get to a solution. Those steps normally are not the steps that you show in a scripted talk or in a 20-minute talk, because in a 20-minute
Yeah.
talk, you just have 20 minutes and you need to go straight to the point. Then you uh, try like summarize everything a lot, and you don't explain. I was trying to set up this Salesforce connector, but it failed and I didn't know why. And I had to go to Google and I had to, it's a different
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
you're showing there.
No, yeah, you're right. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, and B, kind of important point is that no one sits there and gets it right first. don't think I've ever written. I don't think I've ever had a class compile first time right. I'm sure I must have at some point, but it doesn't feel like it. You know what I mean? You always feel like you get a problem. One of the things that, because one of the things I have been thinking about doing is trying to do some sort of similar, like, kind of learn along, kind of code along things. But I've always kind of wondered about the level of preparation needed. And yeah, I'm not saying that
Mhm.
there is no preparation, but I think you're right. Having those mistakes along the way is a key part of it to show people, A, that you're just human, but B, that kind of it's kind of a
I
regular.
prepare. I prepare,
Oh
but
yeah, of course, yeah,
I don't prepare it as if what a talk if it was a talk at a conference.
yeah,
Yeah, and something that happens to me many times. So I do the stream, and then I don't get to the solution in that same stream. And what I do, I say to people, okay, next stream, I'm going to investigate this on my own time, and in the next stream,
yeah,
I summarize it for you, and I so then you don't lose like a lot of
yeah,
time, like trying to fix the error. And sometimes it works like that. And then in the next stream, I say, okay, this was my problem. I found it spending 4 hours of my time like debugging.
yeah.
Maybe not 4 hours, but it's easier to find errors when or error sources when you are not in front of a camera, because you
Yeah.
are calm, you are on your own, and it's much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, always easier when you haven't got someone staring at you. It's like
Yes.
when you're doing a demo. Like I never ever type anything correct the first time in a demo.
Yes.
It's mad, mad. So yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that I think has come through a few times is, yeah, as we've been kind of talking, is how you've become a lot more confident in speaking, in presenting, and in sharing what you've been doing as you've been going. I'm trying to cast my mind back to when we first met and when I first knew Alba, and I can definitely see that you are a lot more kind of confident in public doing those things than you were when you first started, which is been great to kind of see and kind of watch you go and do all these wonderful things. And one of the big areas that or one of the big achievements I think you've done that I was really impressed with was talking at the developer keynote at Dreamforce last year, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes. That was like the most exciting thing I've done in my career so far. It was super exciting because for me it was an honor. I was so
Yeah.
proud of being there talking to developers of all the world about something that I loved, because I
Mm.
talked about Lightning Web Components, and that's a technology that I loved. Yeah, I did some communications trainings
Hmm.
for that. So I have to say that in that special case, because keynotes are so visible and they are so
Hmm.
important, speakers receive training, and that helps quite a lot. But yeah, but I would say that in general, practicing and practicing and practicing, it's the thing that has helped me the most improving my speaking.
Did you? I mean, you wouldn't be human if you weren't a little bit nervous. Did you know how many people watched or saw you speak? Did they
Uh,
give you that information or?
on site, there were like 1,000, something like that, 1,000 something, and online, like many thousands,
Oh
many
wow!
thousands. So yes, but at the same time, like I received so good feedback and love from everyone in the community. So you don't know the positive comments that people sent to me after the keynote, like thousands of comments. I was like really, really, really happy and grateful for the reception that
Yeah.
people had for that talk. And again, so proud and exciting of being able to represent like the company and the technology that I love, and having that opportunity to speak to developers. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think uh, I know I really enjoy about seeing you in particular kind of speak and share stuff is that um, And one of the things that really resonates about you is you are, like, I'm going to say, one of us. And what I mean by that is, like, there's a lot of, and this is not a negative towards any of the other developer evangelists or admin evangelists or any advocates out there, but I think that you bring one of the perspectives you bring, and one of the things that really comes through with you when you talk is that you've come from doing it as a day job and are now just sharing your love for it and really enjoying it. Whereas I think if you'd come in from sort of another platform as an evangelist or something, not having that same level of buy-in from it being kind of on a career pathway and you being really invested in technology, kind of, I think it really shows up. And one of the things that I can say is that I know a lot of people love seeing you do things and hearing you speak, Alba, because you directly relate to them, as in, like, Alba was doing a job like I'm doing, and now look at her, rather than it being some. And again, this is not to throw shade at anyone, but rather than it being kind of like a C-level executive or EVP that kind of is sometimes a little bit hidden away in the background. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So no, it's great to see you do that. And one of the things that you've done, one of the things that you kind of manage as well as part of Dreamforce is the submissions and kind of helping vet all the submissions for Dreamforce and Trailhead DX. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Christy Fidura, myself, we've been handling this in the last 3 times, I believe.
Yeah.
And this is something is one of my favorite parts of my job, because it allows me to stay in touch with the community.
Mm.
So when we have like the dry runs with community folks, and I love like connecting with them. Sometimes it's people I know, sometimes it's new people, and it also helps me get the field perspective, because
Mm.
since I'm working from Salesforce, I'm like in a more happy path world, right? Because when I write my sample code,
Yeah.
it's sample code for applications that are not real.
Yeah.
They don't come from a real like business requirement. So I have like a lot of freedom, right, in why I write. And many times the use cases that I think of are far away from those that you would find in a real implementation, right? So I'm
Yeah.
able to explore a technology, and I try to explore it as if I was using it in real projects. But sometimes I don't get there like 100%, because just of the nature of the apps that I'm building.
Yeah.
But when I see customer talks, I see all the bits that I'm missing. I see like what people struggle with. I connected MuleSoft with Slack, with Tableau, with the whatever API, and this
Mm.
doesn't work. I say, okay, I see you. But it's like more convoluted use cases that are really difficult to think about when you are on the other side. And I love seeing like our customers sharing real implementation tips of our features. That's super valuable.
Yeah, I think, and one of the things I think is also really interesting about seeing talks is that there was a period where I was at an organization where we worked only with kind of very large companies. So we worked with large pharmaceutical companies, and they all had unlimited edition with 4,000 licenses, and it was kind of big scale kind of problems, and they all had everything set up really well. So, like, they had single sign-on, and there was enterprise architects and things were connected. And then I went to working for another company where I worked with a lot of different organizations in many different spots. And what I found was quite interesting there is that there's a lot of kind of, we got this to work because we had to, because we didn't have the budget to buy XYZ, and this is what we learned kind of things. I think there's a real kind of in the trenches, using it and abusing it kind of almost feel to some of the talks, which you learn a lot of. I think there around the edges is where you get some of the real kind of deep tips and tricks, rather than, um, rather than just hearing about, I did this kind of this sample out of the box thing that was going to work first time anyway because it was really standard. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, totally. That's more or less what happens to me. That's why for me, like those sessions are super valuable. I remember one session a few years ago that was like how to do this. I think it was like what Heroku Connect does, something like that, with no money.
Yeah.
And it was like a company that has budget constraints,
Yeah.
and they spend a lot of time solving the problem, right? And the solution had, of course, maintenance costs. But they had done like the different thing, like using different technologies that were like open source and whatever. And we had that talk at Dreamforce, and it was great. It was
Yeah.
great because not like every company or customer has a different situation. And of course, you need to evaluate cost, time, resources.
Yes. I think the thing I've always liked doing at Dreamforce, I haven't been to Dreamforce or spoken at Dreamforce for a few years, but when I was kind of regularly submitting, I always try to do crazy kind of experiment talks. So, going kind of when you were saying, I don't know about being curious, one of the, and that point I just made about finding the real kind of tips and tricks in the cracks is, I always found it really, really interesting to kind of take an idea that has zero commercial value. No one should ever do it. It's one of those things that if you sat down and said to someone, "Do you think this is a good idea?" they should go, "No, not really." To me, that's a brilliant talk idea. So I did one on like writing an AI system in Apex. That's a stupid idea. Apex isn't made to be a machine learning. Like, don't do that. That's dumb. But I learned loads on the way of like kind of tweaking the performance and state management and tuning it and regression, back regression and things like that. I did one on virtual reality using Visualforce and Apex and platform events at the time. Again, like no one should build a virtual reality system like that. I mean, it was stupid. It had no use whatsoever. But you learn so many things about trying to say, all right, we've got this stupid idea. How do we get it to work and connect the dots? And that's where kind of you get all these learnings from. And I think that that's one of the nice things about Dreamforce as well, is that it kind of frees. There is some great sessions there always on something where you're like, why have you done that? And there's always someone at the front going, because I wanted to. Like,
I feel you. I built a restaurant recommendator with Salesforce Connect and Google API.
there you go. See, like, yeah. I mean, I used to love. Do you remember like all the Lego stuff that was there? And there was a year with the IoT. Do you remember they had the San Francisco made out of Lego in the conference
Yeah,
area?
yeah. We don't have that one that anymore, but it's been there
Yeah.
for many years. Yeah.
Yes, you're gonna have to get something. Whatever the newest thing now is, Alba, you're gonna have to start getting that out there. I mean, what's
And AI, and AI.
yeah,
No, and data cloud as well.
yes.
But
So how do you
AI,
go on? Sorry.
no, AI has become more and more important, and it has arrived to stay.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a question I was going to ask: is how do you balance the content you're choosing and you're creating? Both choosing for Dreamforce, but also creating yourself in this kind of. So you wrote a really good blog post recently on like the location service and how to use that. I
Mhm.
really liked that, and you'll forgive me for saying that. If I went to a venture capital firm and said, "I'm going to build one of two apps," one uses a location service to, tell you where you are in relation to something, and the other one is going to use AI. It's not going to use AI for anything interesting. It's just going to use AI to like correct your sentences. The venture capital firm will buy into the AI one because it's sexy at the moment. So how do you balance? And that's terribly
Yeah.
contrived and paraphrased, but you know what I mean. How do you balance out the content that is hitting that kind of sexy kind of popular endpoint at the moment, which everyone's talking about, versus content that's more practical for, because again, most, as you said a second ago, a lot of people won't have access to all of the Einstein stuff, all of the AI stuff at the moment.
Yeah. So we believe that AI has become so important that we are trying to enable all developers in
Mm-hmm.
AI, because it's like nobody knew about generative AI like 2 years ago, right?
Mm.
I mean, nobody, many, some
No,
people
no,
like
yeah, yeah.
researchers and so on, but the general public didn't know. And it's like something that we need to learn from scratch. And same as with Lightning Web Components, it's not easy. If you want to proper understand like all the technologies that are behind the scenes, like retrieval augmented generation, how to do like prompt engineering, all those things correctly, you need to really invest some time, right? So we are trying to give room to that because it's important. It's going to be a big differentiator,
Mm.
like for developers, for
Mm.
companies to be using AI, sorry, or not. And that's why we are having like so much content about AI and data, because data, like having good data is very important to having for having good AI. But at the same time, we don't want to abandon
Mm.
like the rest of topics that developers need to know about, and that's why we are doing around like 50% and 50%. So
Yeah.
I'm doing like 50% of my time AI or data content, and 50% of my time I'm still doing like regular platform
Yeah.
content.
Okay, that's really interesting because yeah, it is as you say, finding that fine balance to keep things relevant, and it is here to stay. I know before we started recording, you and I were both talking about the fact we're both doing AI talks at London's Calling, so it is obviously the hot topic.
Mhm.
Um, so one of the other things I wanted to kind of talk to you about was, and one of the things that I think hopefully come through to people listening and watching is obviously kind of your journey from being, and you'll forgive me for saying this, a bit more shy and reserved when you started out, and less confident in doing things, to now, talking on the developer keynote stage at Dreamforce, and having done all the talks you've done, and kind of sharing what you do, and live streaming and opening yourself up to just interacting with people. One of the things I know you're a big advocate for as well is having more women in technology do that, because there is still quite a skew of of more men, and particularly white men, kind of talking at technology conferences and events. And I know one of the things um, I found refreshing about Financial Force when we worked there was the fact that it was a very mixed and diverse team. Kind of going over to, particularly going over to the Spanish team, there being such a different kind of mixed group of people over there. I really enjoyed that kind of working collaborative environment, because I think it was really well. And we've spoken about other really good kind of female developers there. Agostina, Carolina, and people like that. We've obviously there's a bunch of them that are out there that we've worked with, but it's a big kind of passion area for you as well, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's it was like, you mean working at Financial Force in that environment, right?
That was good, but what I more meant was a passion area for you is helping more female developers talk at Dreamforce, talk at events.
Okay, 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 okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
small
yeah.
joke.
So I
Sorry,
think
it was a badly worded question.
no, no, it's okay, it's okay. So first, let me talk about my experience. So as you described, I think that I came like from a like much more shy behavior or position in regards to what I was doing, in regards to my exposition to the public, and and in regards to what I was showing of me to the
Hmm.
people, to something like much more open, right? Like much more with no embarrassment, no, with more courage, and
Hmm.
with like more like much more exposure, right? And that helped me a lot in my career, but I have to say that it's not been easy,
Mm.
because self-confidence needs to be cultivated. You need to do a lot of like introspection and work on your own self to be able to go that route. And sometimes the environment is not the best one to do that, right?
Hmm.
For instance, if you go to a conference and you see that all the developer speakers are males
Yeah.
and you're a woman, maybe you are not that excited with the idea of presenting yourself in that conference, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to like encourage people, especially women, to try to remove that imposter syndrome that we all may have, especially at the beginning in some cases, and try to be more confident in ourselves and try to really believe that we can give a talk, that we can speak to the public, that we can remove a little bit that curtain that we may have in front of us, and that what we are doing is great, and we can show it to the public, and people can learn from what we are doing.
Mm.
So I was able to do that thanks to my self work, but also thanks to the push and the support from other people.
Hmm.
That's why nowadays I try to support and push women as much as possible in this sense, because I really think that even though you said the maybe if you take a look at the ratio of Salesforce developers in companies, it's
Hmm.
not going to be like that different, like in regards to gender,
Yeah.
right? There are going to be probably more men, but it's not going to be like a 5% women,
Yeah.
95% men. But when I took a look at Dreamforce submissions, it's always like 5% or 10% sessions submitted by women, and 90% submitted by men.
Mm.
So if you're a woman listening to this podcast, and you haven't think about submitting sessions because you feel that they are not going to be interesting, or that you don't have the skills, or that you are not as technical, or some of those negative thoughts, try to remove those thoughts from your mind and try to give it a try, because I've seen like women that submit sessions and then present sessions, they do it so well.
Mm.
So, I mean, the quality of the session is never related to the gender of the
No.
person who submitted the session. And I would tell you something: women are normally like more. They prepare things more. They prepare
Mm.
things more, like some of them, right? Like typically. So give it a try, and don't be shy, and don't think you are an imposter. You are where you should be at, and if
Yeah.
you are in your job position, it's because you are doing great things and because you are doing things well, and that's why your company is paying you. And I'm sure that if you give it a try and submit a talk and get selected and present not only on Dreamforce but also at developer groups or at community conferences, that's going to be great for you, because you're going to learn, it's going to improve your personal brand, and it's going to promote you. It's going to give you networking opportunities, and you're going to meet a lot of people because of
Mm.
that, because people are going to reach out to you after the talk and are going to ask you. So it's going to be a really fulfilling experience and enriching experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that all the points you've raised there are really, really important for people to have in their mind. And one of the other things I'd add there that I think it took me a while to learn or to realize, but like I've sort of I've shared with others who have been wanting to talk, and particularly also women that I've worked with who I've helped like prepare for talking at events is no one turns up to your talk a expecting to know more than you, or b wanting you to fail. Like if I go along to any talk, if I can go along to any talk. If I'm there to learn. if I come out of the session and I've learned nothing, I probably shouldn't have decided to go. Yeah, I'm personally not going to go to a talk that is um, creating custom objects 101. Like, I'm not going to go to that talk because I know how to create custom objects. I'm going to go to a talk where it's something that I read the blurb and go, oh, that sounds interesting. I don't know about that, and to learn. Everyone in the room wants you to succeed and wants to learn from you. They've chosen to come to that talk. So I think that's really important for people to understand that, I have never either given a talk or been at a talk where someone at the end has, stood up and gone, "That was rubbish, boo," or no one does that. I've been in talks where I've been sort of jokingly heckled by my friends in the front, but only to kind of help. That talk I was on about doing where I was live coding. One of my friends was in the front and joked with me that I'd made this mistake, and that helped me along. But in general, people are there and on your side to support you, and I think that's a really important thing for people to know and understand when they're thinking of doing it, because it'll help make it easier.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah. Cool. So we've been going now for well over an hour and a half, and I cognizant of your time, Albert. So thank you very much for joining us. So I've learned loads today, again, talking to you, which is one of the many reasons I always love catching up with you and chatting with you. I thought it was really interesting, your discussion about learning styles and how content crafting for different learning styles and what happens there. I really, you and I are very much kind of kindred spirits in our way of approaching things around curiosity and experimentation. So I look forward to catching up at London Schooling and seeing what we're both kind of tinkering with and going to play with. And so the one thing, the last question I have is that I always ask kind of people on the podcast to give what's a tip or a trick that you would give to the listener to help them either be better at Salesforce, to help them learn better, to help them help them in their work. What's your tip that you would give?
Yeah. So on one hand, I already shared the tip of believe in yourselves and
Mm-hmm.
try to work in your self confidence and try to improve your own ego. So you are um so you lose that sorry, so you get less scared.
Mm-hmm.
You can thrive in your career, and you can improve as a professional, and also personally, right? Because
Yeah.
many times the skills that we gain as professionals affect us personally and makes us be better persons. Like, I have better conversations at home since I've improved my communication skills at work, right? The other tip I would give is try to make use of all the resources that are available at your hand,
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of resources, free resources available. First of all, the people. I mentioned how important has been in my career, like the advice and the support of my different colleagues, the support of my company as well. And also try to use everything that's online. We have in the Salesforce community, we are in a privileged situation because many folks like you are creating content like this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And this podcast is free. It's,
It is free.
it's something that you are giving to people um, altruistically. So they have the opportunity to learn what you learn. That you are giving a piece of yourself to the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same as we have this podcast, we have like a lot of blogs, YouTube channels, etc., available, maintained by the community. And we have the official channels, the things that my team creates, the YouTube channel, podcast, and so on. You have also Trailhead. That's like, we are privileged. So tell
Mm.
me in which technology they have something like Trailhead? I don't know
Yeah.
many. I don't know
No.
many. It's we are really in a privileged position. And also the online communities, right? Well, Trailblazer community, developer groups, where you can again meet people, network, and incorporate those people into your network and find synergies, and also the online communities, because not everyone has the option to attend like physical community
Yeah.
conferences or to network with someone physically, because maybe you work from home or you work in a country which you cannot travel from, but you can
Mhm.
always join a virtual community and meet people there. So those are my main advice.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alba. Thank you so much for your time today. As I say, I've loved the conversation as always. Thank you everyone for listening and for watching along. Please remember to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with the latest episodes and other content. And if you're listening along, make sure to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date with the latest episodes and to visit the CloudBites TV YouTube channel if you want to find out more content. Thank you so much again, Alba, and thank you everyone for listening. I'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you, Paul.